Hollywood is built on charm, connections, and unspoken rules. But Tom Selleck never played that game. He valued respect over fame, substance over noise, and integrity over popularity. For decades, he kept his thoughts private and let his work speak. Now, at 80, with nothing left to protect or prove, he has finally broken that silence. For the first time, Tom Selleck has revealed the 5 actors he hated working with the most across his long career. Settle in as we uncover the names behind the tension, because one of them might just be your favorite. Quiet power of longevity. Born in 1945, only weeks after the end of World War II, Tom Selleck grew up during America's post-war rise, a time that shaped his grounded, rugged image. Unlike many Hollywood stars, his success did not arrive overnight. There was no sudden explosion of fame. Instead, Selleck built his career slowly and deliberately, moving through commercials, small guest roles, and supporting appearances until the moment that finally defined him. That moment came in 1980 with Magnum P.I. As Thomas Magnum, Selleck introduced audiences to a very different kind of American hero. He was confident but not arrogant, intelligent but relaxed, humorous yet deeply principled. Magnum felt human. The series ran for 8 seasons, from 1980 to 1988, earning Selleck a Primetime Emmy and securing his place in television history. The Ferrari, the Hawaiian shirts, the Detroit Tigers cap, and his signature mustache became cultural symbols almost overnight. What separated Tom Selleck from many stars of the 80s was his ability to adapt. He did not cling to one image or one genre. In the late 1980s and 90s, he explored lighter roles, most memorably in 3 Men and a Baby, and its sequel, 3 Men and a Little Lady. Alongside Ted Danson and Steve Guttenberg, Selleck revealed a warm comedic side that audiences embraced. He later surprised a younger generation with his role on Friends as Dr. Richard Burke. The character was mature, calm, and emotionally steady, and it earned him fans who had never watched Magnum P.I. Being both a heartthrob and a father figure at the same time was a rare balance, and Selleck carried it naturally. In the 2000s, he took a darker turn with the Jesse Stone films, portraying a quiet, broken police chief battling alcoholism. The restrained storytelling allowed him to show depth without spectacle. Then, in 2010, Blue Bloods began. As Frank Reagan, the firm but thoughtful police commissioner, Selleck anchored the series for over 14 seasons and more than 270 episodes. On set, he earned the nickname the Quiet General, respected for his leadership and professionalism. Throughout his career, Tom Selleck avoided scandal, publicity games, and constant reinvention. He worked with major stars, turned down roles that conflicted with his values, and let consistency speak louder than noise. In an industry driven by attention, he built something rare, a career based on restraint, endurance, and principle. And yet, despite this calm public image, one mystery remains. Why has Tom Selleck finally named 5 actors he says he hates the most? What happened behind the scenes? That story is coming next. The man away from the spotlight. Behind the famous mustache and beyond the carefully lit sound stages, Tom Selleck lived a life defined by structure, restraint, and deep personal boundaries. Off-camera, he was never chasing attention. He was grounded, deliberate, and guided by a private moral code that shaped not only how he lived, but how he judged the people around him. To understand why certain professional relationships later fractured, it is essential to understand the principles that governed his life. Tom Selleck was raised in the San Fernando Valley in a working-class household where responsibility mattered. His father, Robert Dean Selleck, was a real estate executive known for discipline and fairness. His mother, Martha, balanced warmth with firmness. Together, they instilled values of accountability, humility, and respect for work. These lessons stayed with him long after childhood and quietly informed every decision he made as an adult. Before Hollywood ever became a serious pursuit, Selleck attended the University of Southern California on a basketball scholarship. He later served 6 years in the California Army National Guard during the Vietnam era and seriously considered a military career. That period shaped his temperament. He learned to value punctuality, preparation, and loyalty. Chaos, entitlement, and ego held little appeal for him, and he carried that mindset straight into the entertainment industry. As his acting career grew, those internal standards often clashed with Hollywood culture. He noticed things others ignored: co-stars arriving late, directors dismissing crew members, writers changing scenes without logic or respect for continuity. Tom Selleck did not raise his voice or create scenes. He observed, processed, and remembered. Silence for him was not weakness. It was judgment deferred. On long-running productions like Blue Bloods and the Jesse Stone films, crew members described him as consistent and respectful. He was often the first to arrive and among the last to leave. He learned names, shook hands firmly, and treated every role on set as essential. Respect, however, had to flow both ways. When he sensed arrogance, cruelty, or insincerity, he withdrew quietly but completely. Away from sets, Selleck avoided Hollywood's social orbit. He preferred his ranch life in Ventura County, tending land, fixing fences, and staying off social media. In an interview from 2005, he explained simply that he needed quiet to think, something he felt the industry rarely allowed. That distance was not an act, it was survival. He turned down roles that conflicted with his beliefs, avoided scripts that mocked family, faith, or service, and rejected work that glorified violence without purpose. This resistance earned him labels like difficult or out of step, but those opinions never swayed him. His approval came from his own conscience, not from studios or headlines. During the height of Magnum P.I., tabloids chased him relentlessly. He resented the intrusion and believed personal life belonged behind closed doors. When he stepped back from the spotlight in the 90s, it was not due to lack of opportunity, but a conscious refusal to pay the cost of constant exposure. Over the years, quiet stories circulated about moments when Selleck finally intervened, standing up for crew members, addressing disrespect, or calmly confronting unkind behavior. He never dramatized these moments. When he spoke, it was measured and final. So when Tom Selleck eventually named 5 actors who crossed his line, it was not impulsive. Those names were shaped by decades of observation. Crossing him did not mean public confrontation. It meant permanent distance. And now, with nothing left to prove, he has chosen to speak. The question is simple now. Who were those 5 people? And what did they do to violate the code Tom Selleck never abandoned? Pierce Brosnan.
Home, a nice little welcome.
Truly from home. Navan is deep in my heart, on the banks of the Boyne there.
Pierce Brosnan represented a very different kind of stardom. Smooth, refined, and effortlessly charming, he rose to global recognition as the 5th James Bond. With tailored suits, calm confidence, and an air of international sophistication, Brosnan became Hollywood's image of polished danger. To the world, he was elegance personified. But to Tom Selleck, Brosnan was not just another successful actor. He was a symbol of a changing industry and a quiet threat to everything Tom had spent decades building. Tom Selleck's screen presence had always been grounded. He embodied rugged masculinity, emotional restraint, and moral weight. His characters leaned on instinct, integrity, and experience rather than gadgets or glamour. When Brosnan stepped into the Bond role with GoldenEye in the mid-1990s, it marked the arrival of a new cinematic masculinity, sleeker, more international, and more fashion-driven. That shift did not go unnoticed. The tension between the two men did not begin with James Bond. Years earlier, during the 1980s, both actors were frequently considered for similar roles. Casting conversations often placed them side by side. Spies with charm, men who could balance strength with vulnerability. Industry whispers suggested that producers regularly compared them, using screen tests to decide which version of masculinity better fit the moment. Brosnan eventually secured the Bond role, a part Tom Selleck was never formally offered, though he reportedly admired the franchise. By then, Tom had already been shaped by television success. Magnum P.I. had made him a household name, but also boxed him in. He had missed Indiana Jones, fought to be taken seriously in film, and remained closely tied to American television. Brosnan, meanwhile, moved freely across continents, genres, and markets. While Tom was being offered procedural dramas and selective film roles, Brosnan was headlining global blockbusters, appearing in European fashion campaigns, and becoming a fixture of international cinema. The contrast was sharp. It wasn't jealousy as much as displacement. Hollywood's taste was shifting, and Brosnan fit the new mold perfectly. A reported moment in Monte Carlo captured the unspoken divide. At a charity gala celebrating the success of Tomorrow Never Dies, Brosnan was seated near royalty as guest of honor. Tom, placed several rows back, allegedly skipped the main dinner altogether. Later that night, he was said to remark to a peer that there was a difference between portraying a man of substance and simply wearing the suit well. It was not bitterness, just clarity. The final irritation came in the early 2000s, when rumors surfaced about a potential Magnum P.I. film reboot with Brosnan's name attached. The project never moved forward, but the implication alone stung. For Tom, it suggested replacement rather than respect. There was never a public feud. Brosnan remained gracious, admired, and diplomatic. But the divide was real. Brosnan mastered the room. Tom built his legacy brick by brick and quietly watched Hollywood walk in a new direction. So if Pierce Brosnan was one name, the question remains, who comes next? Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford was already Hollywood royalty long before the dust settled on the 1980s. The man with the whip, remembered forever as Indiana Jones and Han Solo, represented a kind of effortless stardom that defined an entire generation. His heroes were reluctant, sarcastic, and quietly defiant. To the public, Harrison Ford symbolized cinematic destiny. To Tom Selleck, his name carried a much heavier weight. It represented the career path that almost was. The tension between them traces back to a single role that reshaped Hollywood history: Raiders of the Lost Ark. Tom Selleck was reportedly the original choice to play the fedora-wearing archaeologist. He trained for it. He prepared. He was cast. But fate intervened in the form of television contracts. At the time, Tom was bound to Magnum P.I., and CBS refused to release him. Network logistics overruled creative vision. The door closed. Harrison Ford stepped in. A legend was born. For Tom, losing Indiana Jones was not just another missed audition. It was a seismic moment. That role could have redefined how Hollywood viewed him, finally breaking the invisible wall between television fame and film superstardom. He had earned his place through discipline, patience, and years of steady work. And yet, a decision made in a conference room rerouted his legacy forever. Tom never openly criticized Harrison Ford. In interviews, he politely brushed aside questions about Indiana Jones, choosing grace over bitterness. But those close to him have long suggested the frustration ran deep. Harrison hadn't chased the role. He hadn't fought contracts. He was simply available at the right moment. Tom, who had already done the work, lost everything because he wasn't. As the years went on, the contrast only grew sharper. The Fugitive, Patriot Games, Air Force One, roles Tom was rumored to have been considered for or quietly admired from afar. Harrison delivered them with restraint and calm, a style not unlike Tom's own. Yet while Ford collected box office dominance and critical praise, Tom remained closely tied to his television image, reinforcing the divide. There was never a public feud, no confrontation, no tabloid drama, just a silent comparison that followed Tom for decades. In private circles, It was often said that Harrison Ford lived the career Tom Selleck nearly had. What reportedly stung the most was not that Ford took the role, but that he appeared almost indifferent to its magnitude. Ford wore destiny lightly. Tom forged his path with effort and restraint, and sometimes the hardest rivalry is with the life you almost lived. But Harrison Ford was not the only name on Tom's list. The next one might surprise you even more. Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin was the kind of actor who could seize a room in seconds. Fast-talking, sharp-edged, and unpredictable, he could swing from charm to fury without warning. Rising to prominence in the late 1980s and early 1990s, Baldwin became known for performances filled with ambition and intensity. Films like The Hunt for Red October and Glengarry Glen Ross cemented his reputation as an actor who didn't just perform, he dominated. For Tom Selleck, whose craft was built on restraint, quiet authority, and emotional control, Baldwin represented something unsettling, not just a rival, but a symbol of an industry drifting away from the values Tom held sacred. The friction centered on style, philosophy, and one pivotal opportunity. The Hunt for Red October was rumored to be Tom Selleck's long-awaited pivot into serious film stardom. After years of television success, he wanted a role that proved his depth on the big screen. The character of Jack Ryan fit perfectly, a principled analyst with discipline, intelligence, and moral weight. Tom was reportedly considered, possibly even close. Then, at the last moment, the role went to Alec Baldwin, younger, louder, and more marketable to studios chasing buzz. The decision wasn't just professional, it felt symbolic. Tom never publicly criticized Baldwin, but industry whispers told a different story. According to those close to him, Tom didn't resent Baldwin for landing the role. What bothered him was how Baldwin played it. Tom reportedly felt Baldwin's Jack Ryan leaned toward cockiness and showmanship, transforming a thoughtful character into a vehicle for attention. Audiences loved it. Studios rewarded it. Tom quietly disagreed. Their off-screen personalities only widened the divide. Baldwin was known for volatility, sparring with directors, clashing with journalists, and embracing confrontation. Tom, shaped by military discipline and personal code, believed professionalism meant control. You showed up on time. You respected crews. You let the work speak. To Tom, Baldwin's behavior wasn't passion. It was noise. A mid-90s industry event brought the tension into focus. Reports claimed Baldwin arrived late, interrupted speakers, and made jokes that edged into personal territory, even cutting Tom off twice. Tom said nothing. He leaned back and waited. Those who knew him said his silence carried more weight than any argument. Later, he allegedly remarked to a friend, "I didn't work this hard to confuse volume with talent." Baldwin could shout through a monologue and earn standing ovations. Tom still had to fight the label of being just a TV star. Baldwin's rise marked a shift, where excess was rewarded and restraint questioned. There was no public feud, no headlines, just quiet distance. Baldwin broke the rules Tom lived by and prospered. For Tom Selleck, that wasn't just frustrating. It was proof that Hollywood was changing, and not in a way he respected. And the list wasn't finished yet. David Hasselhoff. David Hasselhoff, ranked number 2 on Tom Selleck's unspoken list, was not merely a television star. He was a full-blown cultural phenomenon. First gaining attention with Knight Rider, Hasselhoff later turned Baywatch into a global sensation. His image was built on flash, slow-motion drama, and an almost self-aware exaggeration of heroism. Shirtless runs on the beach, dramatic pauses, and a brand of charisma that leaned toward spectacle defined his rise, especially throughout the 1990s. To Tom Selleck, however, this kind of fame symbolized a troubling shift in television. Tom had built his legacy on restraint, emotional gravity, and quiet dignity. As Thomas Magnum on Magnum P.I., he wasn't just a stylish private investigator driving a Ferrari. He was a veteran wrestling with identity, trauma, loyalty, and moral responsibility. His charisma came from subtlety, expressed more through silence and expression than exaggerated action. The tension between Selleck and Hasselhoff was never rooted in a personal feud or public confrontation. Instead, it grew from what each man represented. Hasselhoff's success marked an era where television leaned heavily into visual appeal and mass-market spectacle. To insiders, Tom viewed Baywatch as the clearest symbol of what television had become. Hugely popular, massively profitable, but thin on substance. Critics often echoed this sentiment, pointing out that the show prioritized eye candy over storytelling. One industry story claims Tom once declined a cameo appearance on Baywatch, allegedly saying he did not want to be associated with silicone and slow motion. Whether said verbatim or not, the sentiment matched his long-held views. The rivalry remained passive-aggressive. During press tours, Hasselhoff reportedly joked that Baywatch had 20 times the audience and half the budget of any private investigator show from the 80s. He never mentioned Magnum, P.I. by name, but the implication was obvious. Tom, consistent with his character, never responded directly. Yet when asked in an interview about television's changing landscape, he calmly remarked, "Some shows are about real people facing real problems. Others are about running in sand." The contrast could not have been clearer. Part of Tom's frustration came from how executives reacted to Hasselhoff's success. Producers reportedly pitched Tom new roles by saying, "Think Magnum, but with Baywatch appeal." To Tom, that comparison felt less like evolution and more like erosion of everything he valued. Ultimately, Tom Selleck did not dislike David Hasselhoff as a person. He disliked what Hasselhoff's success represented. Television had become louder, glossier, and more exportable. Hasselhoff wasn't just running down the beach, he was running away with attention, budgets, and headlines. And for a man who believed greatness came from restraint, that kind of fame felt hollow. The shadow of an effortless legend. Burt Reynolds built his reputation as the ultimate good old boy of Hollywood. From tearing across highways in Smokey and the Bandit to confronting raw brutality in Deliverance, he represented a brand of American masculinity studios trusted for decades. He was charming, fearless, and seemingly effortless. So when Tom Selleck began rising in the early 1980s, many insiders quietly labeled him the next in line, and perhaps the first real challenge to Reynolds' long-held dominance. Their tension was never loud or headline-grabbing. There were no tabloid fights or public insults. Instead, it lived in whispers across casting offices, studio backlots, and industry dinners. Both men were tall, rugged, and instantly recognizable. What formed between them was not one defining clash, but a slow buildup of comparisons, missed opportunities, and subtle slights that accumulated over time. When Tom Selleck landed Magnum P.I., his ascent was sudden and undeniable. The role showcased a rare balance of charm and seriousness. Set in Hawaii, the show gave him an exotic edge while still grounding him in emotional realism. Many critics began noting that Magnum had more emotional depth than most of Reynolds' big-screen roles. Whether Burt heard those remarks or not, one truth became obvious. Tom Selleck was climbing fast. Casting rooms quietly became battlegrounds. Scripts written for rugged, slightly older men with comedic undertones began circulating. Burt Reynolds was still the expected first call, but Tom now had momentum. Studios started asking if it was time to pivot. Reynolds, who had grown accustomed to being the automatic choice, reportedly began hearing Selleck's name mentioned alongside his more often than he liked. Industry insiders have long pointed to several near collaborations that never came together. A buddy cop script reportedly stalled after tension surfaced during an early table read. A whiskey commercial campaign ultimately went to Selleck, allegedly because he felt more grounded. One producer later joked, "They couldn't be in the same room. Too much mustache, not enough patience." If Tom Selleck harbored resentment, it wasn't rooted in jealousy. It was about legacy. Tom had to fight for seriousness in an industry that often dismissed him as a television star, while Reynolds seemed to glide forward on charm alone. Tom sought discipline and depth. Burt made success look easy, perhaps too easy. In interviews, Reynolds occasionally offered compliments that felt slightly backhanded, praising Tom's work while subtly reinforcing his own status. The tension reached its quiet peak when Magnum P.I. won a major award. During his acceptance speech, Tom thanked the hardworking men in this business who earn every role without coasting on a laugh or a look. It wasn't directed at anyone by name, but those present said the atmosphere shifted. Reynolds, seated toward the back, reportedly stopped clapping before the applause ended. There was no dramatic fallout, no reconciliation scene, just two careers running side by side, shaped by different philosophies of masculinity and success. If Tom Selleck disliked Burt Reynolds, it wasn't personal. Burt represented the effortless legacy Tom spent his entire career trying to rise beyond. Now, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Before you leave, check out the other videos on your screen. You won't want to miss them.